Hi folks, and welcome to your first flipped lesson with Mrs. Hausman. As far as this goes, I put on the Google Classroom this video along with a copy of the notes. You can either write this in your notebook or you can print off a copy and fill in the notes. But go ahead and take a moment to do the 5-minute check, pause the video, and then continue playing when you want to see the answers. All right, so if you want to do a quick check of your work, for number 1, you should have gotten 27. Number 2, 20 plus 11n. Number 3, find a common denominator there. So you would get 5a plus 4b all over a squared b. Number 4, 225. And number 5, 2x squared. All right, today's lesson is just reviewing the order of operations, which I'm sure many of you have already seen before. Step 1 is to do grouping symbols. So a lot of people learn this as PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, but it's actually more like GEMDAS because it's any grouping symbol, whether it be a parenthesis, a brace, a bracket, or even absolute value symbols. Anything within a grouping symbol you would have to evaluate first. Then we do all of our powers or exponents, so that's what the E is for. Now this is a tricky part. We multiply or divide from left to right. These two things are actually equivalent. If you see a division first, then multiply, it's however it reads from left to right. So those are on the same step. And also adding and subtracting is on the same step from left to right. So if we have, for example, 1, we want to evaluate 3x squared plus x times the quantity y minus 5, and we know the values of x and of y, we can go ahead first and use the property of substitution to replace the variables with the known values. When we do order of operations, it's a set of rules that we all agree that we are going to follow. So we should do what's inside of the parentheses first. The 0.5 minus 5 will give us a negative 4.5. We also want to then do our exponent second, so 3 squared will give us 9. When we multiply or divide, we would do it from left to right. So 3 times 9 would give us 27, and 3 times negative 4.5 would give us negative 13.5. So our final answer here is 13.5. If we follow these rules, we will all get the same standard answer. And this really helps us when doing formulas. A formula is any mathematical sentence that expresses the relationship between certain quantities. If you know the value of every variable except for one, you can use substitution and the order of operations to find the value of the remaining variable. And that is what is very powerful in algebra, to find a pattern and create a formula to model certain real life situations. For example, let's say I have a formula, let me back this up a little bit, formula for the number of reams of paper to print n copies of a booklet that is p pages long is this following formula. R equals np over 500, where R is the number of reams needed. The question is, how many reams of paper would we need to buy in order to print 172 copies of a 25-page booklet? So we can use the formula and plug in our values that we know. We know that we have 172 copies to make. We know that each of those are 25 pages. So that's going to give us a total number of pages that we will need to run off and copy. We know that every ream of paper has about 500 sheets of paper. So dividing that by the 500, that means that we would need 8.6 reams of paper. Now we can't buy a 0.6 part of a ream of paper. You go to the store and say, hey, I want 0.6 part of a ream of paper. They would just look at you. You're crazy. So we would round that up to 9 reams of paper to make sure that we had enough to actually run off the copies. Now this is an introduction lesson. You have seen this before in Algebra 1. Just want to kind of review some of the basics here. And we are going to be doing this assignment here on page 8 numbers 24, 29 to 34, 37, 40, 43, and 44.